Hey everybody, Baldoric here. Today we're going to be talking about Roy with his new Resplendent attire. I thought it would be a good time to kind of figure out ways to build this unit, talk about how you can actually use him, whether you do want to invest in him or you just have the one free unit of him and you want to actually try him out. So obviously we've had Roy for a while in the game, but now that he has his Resplendent outfit, which means he gets some stats, which is +2 to everything, it actually does give him a pretty big boost to what he actually needs to make his effective role happen. So why don't I go ahead and just talk about his weapon, jump right into the builds, and let's discuss what we can actually do with Resplendent Roy. So Binding Blade with the effect. Effective against dragon foes. If foe initiates combat, grants defense res +4 during combat. And if its HP is above 50% and foe initiates combat, unit makes a guaranteed follow-up attack. So basically, quick riposte. Alright? So you have Dragon Effectiveness, you have a Defense Res +4, if foe initiates combat, which means enemy phase he's going to be a little bit tankier, and built-in Quick Riposte, which means he is an enemy phase tank. Excuse me. Now, that being said, that means it's pretty much obvious with his stat line and his abilities that he is a tank unit, so I decided to build him as such, and I think I've come up with some pretty safe and powerful builds. Now the first one, if you've watched my Itsuki video, should be relatively familiar. Now, this build here is capitalizing on enemy phase and Aether raids, while also working with Null Seed to make sure that he is, negating any effects that could potentially be harming him even further. Pulse Smoke is making sure that the enemy is not able to get their specials off. Distant Counter, obviously you want to be able to attack every single time you can. Noontime is going to be keeping him up. Gives him that slight HP boost that he does need to help survive. Reposition is just kind of standard. And of course we have Binding Blade with his Quick Riposte Refine. Now what's really good about this, if you have, I forgot to say Mirror Stance as well, but I mean that's pretty obvious what that does. That's going to put his res at a pretty respectable 42 and his attack at 66. Now on enemy phase, now we just said his res was going to be 42, but it's going to actually be 46, and his defense is going to be 44, because he gets the +4 to defense and res from his weapon, and a built-in Quick Riposte. So what's really cool about this, what's really interesting about this unit, you don't have to worry about completing those speed checks, because he's got Quick Riposte, Quick Riposte built into his weapon, and still has a respectable 41 speed, so he might still be able to double on player phase, depending on what kind of a unit. If you're going against an armor, he's going to double. Especially an armored dragon, and then he's got effectiveness, which is really powerful. Now, the thing with this unit is you want to make sure that you do have a partner that you can either smite him in, or shove him in, whatever it is that gives him some kind of boost. For example, if you were using Red Mail Corrin, that gives him the additional stats. You could use something like, well, since he's getting defense res +4, you could give him an attack speed link, shove him in, be right next to Mail Corrin, and get 4 additional stats, and he's going to be a pretty solid wall. That HP stat of 70 is really good. Like, that thing is going to be hitting basically every single check for HP that there is. You're going to be avoiding things like Averses unless they're very highly merged, and Virians, same thing, right? So unless they have super invested panic units with those kind of tomes, he'll be dodging all those. I think he still gets hit by max panic room, because I think it's 70 or less. So he does still get that by literally the exact point. But most people don't have the full invested panic room, especially in lower tiers. So that shouldn't really matter. So if you're doing AR and you already have this unit maybe semi-invested, with this Resplendent build, on this season, I think he works really well. He does work well in both seasons, Light and Astra. I chose this one because speed is kind of not that important, because you are going to be using him on enemy phase. So I thought the defense boost from Naga and the attack boost from Altina actually end up being the most beneficial for him, because the more attack you have, the more kills you actually do secure. And the more defense you have, the tankier he is. And he already had a pretty respectable defense stat, and that pushes it a little bit over the top, and just gives him that little extra edge he may need to survive. So that's my thoughts on it, and obviously I'm giving him the summoner bonus. So only fully invested with the summoner, I think it works really, really well. Without the summoner, it's not as favorable because of his lack of like his HP is going to be at 65, which is still fine. But I think with summoner, he actually ends up being like a really, really good tank. So something to consider. All right, for arenas. Now you don't have to go with this build exactly, but I chose kind of the same thing, except I swapped some stuff out with some max scoring skills. So let's talk about the Rally Attack Defense Plus. Could honestly be any of those skills plus. I just usually choose one that, you know, would work for teammates next to him. Now, Aether Heavy Blade, I think is going to be really powerful for him because his attack stat is 57. With Joint Attack, it's going to go up to 62. And depending on what your other allies on your team are, and if you have, like, you know, like an ally support for an extra 2 or whatever it is, he does have a fairly high attack stat, and most people that are going to be attacking him, he should make that heavy blade check. Which means that as long as there is a combat that he gets 2 attacks off and is hit once, which we know he'll get 2 attacks off because of Binding Blade, his Aether is going to be ready. So you can basically make it so that on enemy phase, you put him in, he gets attacked, he will hopefully kill whoever it is he attacked, and on your turn, if he's not attacked again, he has Aether ready for the next combat. So, as long as your allies will actually boost some of his stats, so you're going to want to make sure you have allies that have either res or defense boosting things, because you'll notice that without the extra bonuses like the summoner support or the seasonal buffs from like a mythic hero, his defense and res stat aren't as high, and it makes it that he is a little bit squishier in arena. So he definitely feels a lot better in AR than he does in arena. That being said, you can use legendaries to help kind of fix this problem. I would recommend a legendary that can boost his defense or res just to give him that extra tankiness. But you want to make sure that if you are using him in arenas that your allies have other skills to buff him. Maybe joint hone like defense and joint hone res, something to that effect, or just any ability like that that's a high scoring one that will work to buff his stats, or a weapon that does the same. Either way, you want to make sure that there is support for him in the stats that he is lacking, like defense and res, to make sure that he can tank those attacks and get the job done. Now, lastly, let's say you just get this legendary right from the Fey Pass, and you're like, okay, I have him. How do I build him? Well, this is a really simple build for this unit that guarantees that he can double on both phases. This is a mixed phase Roy. And the way it's going to work is we have Iceberg here. Iceberg is going to be going off basically every combat. Because how it's going to work is on your phase or enemy phase, right? He is going to be attacked. Let's say, let's start with enemy phase. So he's attacked. That's 1 charge. Heavy Blade, when he attacks back, makes it 2 more charges. Now it's ready. Quick Riposte built into his weapon. He now Iceberg attacks, and they get the, it's additional, like, plus almost 20 damage on that attack, which is really strong, right? So it's pretty cool. And I chose Fury 3 here because it does boost all the stats by a little bit, and honestly, any unit that's one neutral and not merged, you want as many stats as you can get because they are pretty low to start with. Now, I chose Attack Smoke just to give him that extra bit of tankiness, so after that first unit does attack, because the stats are relatively low, you want to kind of give him something to survive a little bit more. Attack Smoke is going to make it so that the other enemies that are going to come in and attack him don't get to. And after the first combat, because of Fury, he'll be in Desperation range, so on your turn, even if he doesn't make the speed check, Desperation will happen and he will be able to attack twice. All of these are very affordable. You can get all of these skills in the either Heroic Grail pool or the normal 3-4 star pool in relatively simple 3-4 star units to get these skills. So nothing too crazy built in here. The only thing you may not have if you aren't playing crazily is the Heavy Blade 3 if you haven't invested in that. But if you don't, I would highly recommend that you do because a lot of builds do use it. It's very good for almost any kind of unit that has a high attack stat and you're looking to get things off like Gale Force or something like that. So always I would recommend building up your Sacred Seals. That being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be putting out more videos just like this one in the future. Normally I put the Resplendent videos out the day that the hero came out, but I was a little bit busy that day and I just didn't have time to do it. Plus, I was working on my Roker Siege guide video, so a couple things got in the way, but I do finally have this one out. Typically, though, it will be on the day the Resplendent Hero comes out. I will talk about them in a video. But that being said, if you like content like this, consider subscribing. I'm going to be putting out more videos just like this one in the future, and a couple other guides and things like that. A couple other plans down the road, but we'll see where that goes. That being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time.